Welcome to Learning Unit number 9, where we're going to focus on injuries. Let's take a look at the overview of this learning unit. So we know that the burden of disease studies place causes of death and dailies, I hope you can all recall what dailies stands for, into three groupings. So we've looked at group 1, which is communicable. We've looked at group 2, which is non-communicable diseases, and we're looking now in this learning unit at group 3, injuries. But within this group, we are looking at both unintentional injuries, and that includes what they consider transport injuries, and intentional injuries, which is self-harm, interpersonal violence, along with conflict and terrorism. So for the focus of this unit, because that's a lot of information to cover, isn't it? So for this unit, we're really looking on the unintentional injuries, which include poisonings, firearm deaths, especially in children, falls, fires, drowning, and road injuries. The leading cause of both deaths and dailies attributable to injuries is road traffic accidents. So risk factors for road injuries, according to our author, revolve around education, enforcement, and engineering. So we know we can do something about educating others, enforcing laws and regulations, along with engineering, especially the safety of our throughways and roadways. So we're going to look at the burden of these injuries by the World Bank region, the World Bank country income group, age, and gender. And our textbook does a wonderful job with this. And then we're going to end our unit with a review of a case study on the Vietnam motorcycle helmet laws. And then we're going to look at our own country's motorcycle helmet laws. And these vary by state to state. So each state in our country has a somewhat different law. So by the end of this learning unit, you're going to be able to understand the global impact as well as our national impact of unintentional injuries. And you're going to be able to state the most common categories of intentional and unintentional injuries and their relative importance in the global burden of disease. And then you're going to be able to describe the impact of motorcycle helmet laws on the burden of road injuries, both in other countries, and we're looking at Vietnam, of the world, and in our country, and in the state that we reside in. So you're reading the chapter of Skolnick, chapter 15, which is entitled Injuries, and you're looking at some website information and articles. By the end of this learning unit, you're going to do the discussion board post, and I did change it so that there is no reply. So I will fix this in a minute, but it's just going to be your post and the quiz. So moving along, we spent a little time with that. You're watching this video. I told you about the readings. The quiz, please note that it is based on chapter 15, and please have your book available as you will need to complete this in one sitting. And a few of the questions actually require you to look up information from the tables. So have your book available or your ebook, whatever you're using, open to the chapter on injuries. Then there's a brief article on firearm deaths being the #1 cause of unintentional deaths in children. Again, this is the U.S. Oftentimes, even though this is a global health course, some of the information that we do focus on in the supplemental information besides your text is that of the U.S. So I'm asking you to read that article. And then we're going to look at motorcyclist safety. So we go to this site, which is the Governor's Highway Safety Association, GHSA. And just so that you know, the last year being 2019, I do believe, was the last year that this source, Governor's Highway Safety Association, provided information on the numbers of deaths related to state and according to state laws. So I will give you another informational source to look at the difference in motorcyclists traffic fatalities based on state to state laws. But what you're looking at here is an overview of the issue. And this is pretty current data. So I want you to read through this information, the overview, a bit about the states, and then we're going to come back to this in the second source here. So yes, that is the same source you were just in, but I want to assure them that everybody goes to the specific state that they reside in to find out more information. So that's why I have it separated out there. So if you live outside of Pennsylvania, you're going to be able to quickly review your state motorcycle law. So wherever you reside, you'll be able to look at the information specific to that. And even if you do reside in PA, you may want to, or in any state, you may want to look at and compare yourself to another state that you're interested in looking at the data. So then there is another link, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and this is for specific to Pennsylvania. And you're going to want to make sure that you look at this link, and it's very short. It's the frequently asked questions, and they're all within this one page as far as how do you comply with the law. So this gives you a little bit more information. You can see it's very short. So I want everybody to be looking at the source of information, please, before you do your discussion board. And then the last thing that you'll need to do for your discussion board is review this article that talks about the most dangerous states for motorcycle riders. And you're going to be using this information in your post. Now, please know that it is difficult to compare states. So each state has either a partial, a universal, or no helmet law. So it's up to the state what their regulations are. You're going to read about that, but it's difficult. Like, we can't compare a state really, truly, with no helmet use laws compared to one that has universal. And why is that? There's another variable, and a very significant variable, and that is how long motorcyclists in that state can really be riding their motorcycle. So as you know, in Erie, Pennsylvania, and in Pennsylvania in general, we have a much shorter season than, for instance, California. So there's a big difference. So there's going to be more, or likelihood of more motorcycle fatalities in states that have longer use of riding their motorcycles than in states that are limited more significantly by the weather. But we can still look at the difference. We can still see what the rates of injury and deaths are based on state by state, and we can begin to look at the difference in part based on whether they have partial, universal, or no helmet use laws in that state. But I don't want you to get confused and think, oh, a state such as California has a higher rate, even though they have a different helmet use laws than Pennsylvania, and then you're right away jumping to the conclusion that it's related to the law, where you have to take into account the length of time one can ride a motorcycle in our states. So then let's look at discussion board 9, which is the final thing for this week. And after reading, especially focusing on the case study, which is entitled, because I know some of you have an ebook, it's entitled Vietnam Motorcycle Helmets. And you're going to, that's on page 466 to 467 in chapter 15, but you're going to want to review that very closely because you're going to need that to do the discussion board, as well as reviewing all the information about motorcycle helmet laws that I just went over, looking again at those links, and you're going to answer 3 questions. There will not be a reply required, so please assure that your post is in depth. And typically your posts need to be 200 plus words, with your replies, according to the syllabus, should be 150 plus words, just to give you some guidance. Well, without that, I'm looking for an in-depth post of at least 300 words if you want to do a word count. But I just like to give you some guidance on how to complete. So you're going to do 3 things. I'll let you read through those and we'll end the video for learning unit number 9. Again, on injuries, with a focus outside of our textbook readings on unintentional injuries.